Welcome everybody to another edition of the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens Black Table Talk. Today is Friday, November 17th. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
Yeah, and we have some very special guests here today to talk about a very important topic about what went on yesterday. But first, our special guests are us.
That's right. Foster Sellers.
Yeah, and
Jonah Smith.
And, the unimportant guy, Travis Register. These men went down to the Unlock the Box, Erase Solitary Confinement Amendment Act rally, and they experienced some things, good and bad, but they went down there, to gather some data, and also they just have the experience of what was going on. So we talked about this on Wednesday with Mr. Damon Jones, but we have him post-talk now. So we're going to dive off into this. I'm going to ask the men some questions. They're going to give us some answers and some good detailed information about what went on. We're going to kick it off right now. So, down there yesterday, early in the morning, about 9 o'clock.
It was quite a scene.
Was it a rally?
Well, so yesterday we had the call from work to, and we had been informed beforehand, but we had the call to go down and attend a rally, Erase Solitary Confinement, part of the Unlock the Box advocacy to end solitary confinement in D.C. jails.
Mm-hmm.
So we took the metro down there, and we joined a group of other protesters and found another member of our group, Damon, who had speaking, and he shared with us, he shared with the group his experience with solitary confinement, and we then went on to meet with the various council members. Actually, we didn't meet with any council members. We met with their staff, but we did have hearings with all the staff members of the D.C. council members, and were able to speak to each of them and advocate on behalf of the removal of solitary confinement. And we had a lot of people who talked about their experiences with solitary confinement in the criminal justice system in D.C., and none of it was pretty. It was all very ugly. We shed tears. There was a woman there there was a mother. She had lost her children. She had lost a child to D.C. police. D.C. police had killed her kid, shot her boy, and he had experienced solitary confinement beforehand as well.
What's her name, Kenethia?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I know Kenethia,
Yeah, very touching to see a mother whose son was shot by D.C. police advocating on behalf of the legacy of her child to D.C. council staff. So it was a day like that, a very emotional time. So during this podcast episode, we'll talk a little bit about what we experienced during that rally, thoughts about what to do next.
Yeah, so Foster, what was it that you experienced? And I know the individuals who gave little testimonials, and like Jonah said, they were kind of, not kind of, there was some tears shed, and he said it wasn't pretty because those type of experiences are never pretty. But what were some of the things you took away from the testimonials, and what hit you hard?
What I took away from some of the testimonials and what hit me hard was the fact that we were down there to really change our criminal legal system. And what I mean by that is we're trying to unlock the box.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to help inmates who have experienced solitary confinement have that practice done away with.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to help advocate that D.C. City Council do something to pass this legislation, Erase Solitary Confinement Act. We went down there trying to get help from Councilmember Pinto to bring this up in a hearing and call for the vote. We also met with staffers from Councilmember Henderson's office, Councilmember
Furman.
And those three offices took time to meet with us as far as their staffers were concerned. But we need to act now. And one of the takeaways and some of the things that was said was that a lot of times it starts off with a policy idea, right? Let's end solitary confinement. That sounds good. But then you need data to back that up.
Mm-hmm.
The ACLU had a report saying that the District of Columbia Public has outcried over this issue and said they don't want to use this tactic in DC jails. And yet no action has been taken.
Wow.
So we were in meetings yesterday and testimonials were shared from returning citizens, and they still seem to want to wait, and the urgency isn't really there.
So what you said, there's the testimonials, what's some of the stuff that was being said?
The argument was being made that once you're in solitary confinement, it has adverse effects on your mental, physical, and spiritual well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, the likelihood of you being released from jail back out on the street and committing a crime is high due to the mental health trauma that you went through in solitary confinement. Therefore, the idea was that if you end this practice, you alleviate the pain and drama that comes along with people acting out and committing more crimes because they're not in that situation where they're going to be in solitary confinement because you've done away with the practice.
It goes beyond that as well. It goes beyond that important point as well. In fact, the UNHCR, the UN Commission on Refugees and Human Rights, says that anything over 15 days in solitary confinement constitutes torture. So
Very true.
We're dealing with human rights issues here. And some of the testimonies that we heard were very moving. We heard an individual break down in front of us and cry, recounting the humiliation and the, just the mental games that end up being played upon oneself when they're in solitary confinement. Let's just talk about what the conditions are like, what that means to be in solitary confinement. Well, it's just what it says. There's one person inside of a cell. You're sleeping on a concrete block. There's no bed. When I was in solitary confinement, I didn't have a blanket. We were given only our food. We didn't have commissary. We had no books. We had no visits. We were locked up 23 hours a day. We were supposed to be out of our cell for 1 hour a day for recreation or for showering. I never got even that. So it's a very cruel practice. Human beings are supposed to be social creatures, right? We're supposed to be social creatures. We're supposed to interact with one another, and to remove that ability to do that is absolutely devastating to the human mind, and it just destroys it. And we treat people that way, and then we ask them to remain civil and be productive members of society when they get out, but we don't know the damage that we've done to that individual. We need to take responsibility for that.
Or maybe they do know the damage that gets done to put a human being in a box like that, and to purposely, when we go to sleep, what we do? We cut the lights out because it creates a sort of comfort and a type of a shutdown. But when you leave lights on 24/7, that does something to your mind. Your mind, you really can't settle because the lights are on. Because we're accustomed as human beings, to when it's time to go to sleep, or you want to rest, or you want to meditate, you cut the lights out. But when the lights are consistently on and it's cold in there, and you're getting below the type of food that you're supposed to get, this is the type of stuff you do. You only do this to animals. You do this to an animal, you going to jail. But you're treating humans like this. And I mean, from what I heard, there wasn't a big gathering for the rally.
it was a little surprising, I think, to all of us, the reaction from the public. Perhaps it wasn't well enough advertised, but the outcry, we need more of an outcry. We need more of a public outcry against this travesty, I would think. Because what we saw on the street yesterday was not enough. It was not enough action. It was not enough presence. We need to get the message across to the council members that this must pass. And we asked for the bill to be heard. We asked for a hearing to be held in January. We know this is the holiday season. We know that Thanksgiving is coming up. We know that Christmas is coming up. We know that New Year's is coming up. But what we have is an open spot in January. We want to hit that time frame in order to make sure that there's a hearing so that we can get this before the council members.
You know, one thing was said yesterday when we was, doing a little light discussion was that there wasn't a whole lot of people that was in power that was there. And it was said, when people are in power, you have to show them power. So by the limited amount of participants that was there, it's showing that there's a lack of power. So the people in power is like, okay, well, I can just send my representatives up there. I don't need to go because that's not important for us to go. It wasn't enough shown for us to go out there.
Yeah, but we're gonna keep at it though. We're not gonna.
Yeah, most definitely.
Keeping at it is exactly what I wanted to talk about. This is a call to action. This is a call to action. The type of treatment that inmates are experiencing in solitary confinement is unacceptable.
Very.
It's unacceptable. And yesterday's presence was just the start. We're not finished. It was just the start. It's an opportunity for the National Reentry Network and other organizations like DC Justice Lab.
Shout out to DC Justice Lab.
To continue this work. When people are out and they feel like they have been forgotten, talking about inmates, abandoned, and an afterthought, okay, that might be an excuse why they might not have shown up yesterday, right? Because that's how city council or those powers at be make them feel. But this is just the start. This is a call to action.
I mean, just like they go and they rally and stir the pot, so to speak, when it comes time to vote. We need these numbers for this vote. I mean, it's the same thing needs to be done about unlocking the box and ending solitary confinement. I mean, almost every household family in the country is affected by one of the family members. I don't care how close they are, whether it be right there in the house or a distant family member, a cousin, whatever. They know about an individual being locked up.
They know about an individual being locked up. And what they also know about is how we cannot just go home. One of the things that was said yesterday as a testimony that was shared from someone who had experienced solitary confinement was that there needs to be oversight, meaning city council, the government officials who are in support of passing this act to end solitary confinement have got to be the oversight. They can't just simply say, we want to do something and not hold a hearing, like Jonah was referring to. We need to have the hearing held. City council members vote on passing this actual act and to end solitary confinement. But most of the times, what the person was saying as they shared their story was that the oversight isn't really there.
When you say oversight, what do you mean?
To make sure the policy is implemented.
Okay.
To make sure the policy is implemented, meaning we do away with solitary confinement and the practice isn't used in DC jail. And most of the time, the person was saying, who was sharing a testimony, was saying those elected officials sometimes don't see the importance of that oversight and go home. They go home. They have a listening session. A couple of people come to hear about their stories that they've shared as far as personal testimonies about what they experienced in solitary confinement. And then they go home. But like I said, this is a call to action.
Definitely a call to action. An action that needs to grow day by day until there's a finalization of a victory. I mean, me myself, I've been in prison. Just came home not too long ago from doing almost 28 years. I did the math the other day, and I'm like, man, I was 2 months from 28 years. I keep saying 27. I can say 28. But I was in solitary confinement just for a little bit, and it was crazy. And what I did to keep myself sane was that I would sing or I would exercise, because we didn't get books or none of that. And I would save portions of my food. Yeah, I sang.
Wow.
I made a little noise. But whatever you need to do in order to stay sane, because it will be real easy to buy into that culture and to that environment and to that vibe that's back there. Everybody, if you ever been to a dog pound, and before you actually go into the door, where those animals are at, you see them, and you got these big dogs in these small cages, and the only thing they can do is lay down. You don't hear any noise. You may hear a little whimper and things that matter, or maybe a bark of anguish. And to be in a solitary confinement with humans and to hear nothing, but every now and then a cry of anguish or frustration or of help, man, it's that's something you don't normally hear. And to hear it from a human, we talking about a grown man. To hear it, it's like, man, it does something to you. So it will be real easy to embody that and have it sticking to your mind to where you become that. But I didn't do that. A couple of days I was in there, man. I would, like I said, I would sing, I would exercise, and I would recite things I had in my head in order to keep me focused, even to the point of me keeping my daughter at the forefront of my mind.
Yeah,
I gotta get back out to my baby. You know what I'm saying? All that type of stuff. I'm not gonna come out here burnt out. Cause I seen old heads burnt out, man, and they don't get no love. You know what I'm saying? And they're overlooked and treated as such, pushed to the side. But so I said I'm not gonna be burnt out. No, so I did what was needed in order to do that, and I came out on top. But what about the individuals who don't have that presence of mind to do that? Because they done been through it a few times, because that's a behavior, man. It like snowballs.
Yeah, that's right. It does snowball. You go to solitary confinement once, and then you end up going again and again and again. It becomes problematic, that's for sure.
And so, I don't understand, from what y'all was telling me, how there's only a little bit of people, but everybody wants their family members who've experienced solitary confinement or who in it right now, or everybody knows somebody just about. There's more people, there's less people that don't than there is that do.
Yeah.
So why aren't we coming out? Everybody got family, especially in D.C. Everybody got multiple family members that's locked up and done suffer from this type of stuff, and haven't came back from the point of no return. So how come there hasn't been somebody from each household in the city that was down there on them steps, man, and fighting?
One of the things that we talked about yesterday, and someone shared another testimony as they have experienced a family member and going through solitary confinement, is the lack of connectivity to the outside world. And what I mean by that is there's no one that you can go reach out to. There's no phone call that you can make to go reach out to someone and say, right, this is what I'm experiencing. Call my city council member and tell them to do something about this inhumane activity that's going on in this jail. And it brought tears to a lot of people's eyes that they were saying in their testimonies they shared what their experience with solitary confinement with their family member who was in solitary confinement, that it's damaging not only to the person who's experienced solitary confinement, but the family on the outside trying to get a hold of that family member has now gone through the mental health issues that they're going through.
Ooh, big one.
Trauma. Mm-hmm. And the big issue is the fact that it's generational. The lady was saying that she has a daughter of a particular person who was in solitary confinement who did not have access to her father. And so now it's the mother, it's the actual son and the daughter traumatized and going through these experiences of what solitary confinement has done to a household, to a person, to a human being. Mm-hmm. And still nothing is being done about it. This is a call to action. We've got to do something about the fact that people in this position only have themselves. And like you said, so you're not burned out when you come out of this situation or whatever. You can at least tell your story and hopefully get someone to do something about this.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the lady was saying, her family, they had no access to their family member.
And you know what they'll do? Because I used to work in an area where they call the unit team area. That's where you have your unit manager, your case manager, your counselor, and your secretaries. They all work back there. However the unit is structured, they may be on both sides, and both sides might be B1 and B2, or things of that matter. But I would hear how the staff, when the parents would call or somebody, a loved one would call, wanting to check up on their son or their brother or their uncle, whoever it is to them, and they would say, "Hey, I haven't heard from my son in 2 weeks. That's not like him. I'm calling to see if he's okay." "Oh, yeah, he's okay. He's fine." But how do I know he's fine? Well, where is he at? How come I haven't talked to him? "Oh, it's just been, they won't say." And they say they can't say, but you can say. Especially if they're not in the hospital. If they're in special housing or even solitary confinement, they can say that he's not in population right now. But what they say is he's okay, and I done heard it. And the individual is not okay.
Yeah.
It's been times where he may have been got into an altercation with the officer, and what they do is not take him to the SHU because it was too serious. They done stomped him out and then put him in solitary confinement. So when the family is asking about it, "Oh yeah, he's just fine." Okay, but what about the time when you gassed this individual, not checking his records to see if he had asthma or not, and you gassed him in there and he dies? So is he still okay? But then they cover it up and say, "Oh yeah, he died from asthmatic complications."
Yeah. Multiply that times 100, and that's what you have.
Right.
That happens all over the place.
Right. So I highlight that to say you got staff members who are covering up this type of thing.
Yeah.
So if that on that type of level, because that's like the lowest thing on the totem pole, or the lowest thing. Or I don't know how the totem pole go. I think the highest is the least.
Is the best.
If the highest is the best. Okay, so they're the lowest thing on the totem pole. So if they're covering up down at that level, they say doodle runs down here, doesn't it? So how much covered up is going on at that type of level when it comes to this type of stuff?
It has to reach much higher.
That ain't right, man. So, like you say, Foster, man, a lot needs to be done. And a lot of paperwork need to be drawn up. A lot more rallies need to be done. Getting in the face of these council members and where we need to go, we tear down the the Wilson stairs if need be for the type of thing going on.
Some of the staffers were even pushing back. They were saying that the guards in the prisons have certain instances where they can actually put someone in solitary confinement. Sexual orientation was one. Health care was another, mental health reasons. And then for safety purposes, if someone was being violent, throwing feces or something like that. I still don't see the correlation between how you can treat someone who's a human being with no dignity.
Right.
With no respect.
A human being.
And bottle all of that up into just simply saying, we're going to put you in solitary confinement for how who knows how long.
Yeah, it's definitely more than 15 days, I can tell you that.
So when the staffer was asking that really was a call to action for people who heard it to say, you know what? These are the stories that we're telling you as far as the testimony that we heard yesterday that says this is what's really happening.
Mm-hmm.
These are non-violent instances where people were put into solitary confinement and you don't have any justification for that. That's wrong.
I'd just like to read a statistic here from the Journal of the American Medical Association about people who spend time in restrictive housing. So people who spend time in restrictive housing are 78% more likely to die by suicide during the first year after their release than and those who have not spent time in restrictive housing. And restrictive housing is another word for solitary confinement. Solitary confinement directly results in an increase in the rate of suicide the first year of release. 78% increase. Journal of the American Medical Association.
Wow. So you saying after solitary confinement, these individuals come home, they end up committing suicide?
After they've gotten, yes, exactly. After they've been released and gotten what they wanted most, which is their freedom, the memories and the plague of what they've gone through haunts them to a degree that they take their own life. Yeah,
wow.
That's the impact it has. And we do this every day over and over by the thousands to people, citizens all across the country, day after day.
Black Table Talk world, man, I hope y'all listening, and I'm hoping it's settling into your hearts and minds to where you want to get up and, not only just be listeners of this podcast or ones that's even like it concerning these topics.
Be activists.
Be activists. Be active on exactly what's going on, because this is something serious that needs to be taken care of, man. It needs to be ended and ended right away.
It definitely needs to end and end right away. But at the same time, this is a call to action for us to get out there and to help people understand what the issues are, and then make sure that we end solitary confinement. Full stop.
It ain't enough to just talk about it. Even us behind these mics, ain't enough to just talk about it. We got experience with it. We need to get out there like yesterday and continue on doing the same thing. I mean, this is the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens. So now, not only do we exclusively deal with returning citizens, but we're also active advocacy as well. So, we partner with DC Justice Lab and doing these types of things. So, we definitely got boots to the ground. And this is the call to duty to everybody else is out there, who's saying they got boots to the ground. Put your boots to the ground, man. And, just rescue our family members and friends, man, who've been in this solitary confinement and do away with it. Any closing remarks, guys?
It's an issue that's close to my heart, but I'm sure it's close to everyone's heart here. And like you say, who hasn't been touched by the criminal justice system? Most people have. In fact, most people in D.C. have. I'm sure it's important to all of us, especially during this holiday season.
Especially, and that's another thing. I know we said about, doing closing remarks, but think about the individuals, these staff members, these CEOs, whatever you want to call them, who work these institutions. And when the holidays come, they go home. They're with their family members and friends. They're not thinking about this individual or these individuals that they have back there in solitary confinement as being tortured. We don't get a break. When you're in solitary confinement, you don't get a holiday break. You get fed the same old garbage piece of loaf that you got to kind of ration throughout the day, but it's no good. It's gonna be cold. It tastes like boot leather. No flavor to it. It's breakfast, lunch, and dinner mixed together. Maybe get some water. You're not getting Kool-Aid, none of that. You're getting water. So these officers, they're going home. They're going to be with their family members. They're taking time off. But solitary confinement, there's no time off. There's no relief. Torture still goes on. Man, that's sickening, man. I just thought about that. That's sickening.
And to that point, my closing remarks are going to be to simply do more to help us end solitary confinement here in Washington, D.C. By that, I mean, write your city council member, call your city council member, and ask them to be a co-legislator to this policy, and then to ask them to get this actually a hearing so we can pass this law. And one thing y'all said earlier was, in the beginning of the talk, was that you have to get the data. Educate yourself. And I ain't talking to myself. I'm talking to myself as well. Man, we got Google, y'all. We got plenty of information out there that we can find out what's going on in order to educate ourselves, man, and be mobilized in order to fight effectively. So, man, do your homework. Get out there and put in the work. Black Table Talk, National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens. This is what we do. We want to sign off, but we never signing out. Man, we got unlock the box work to do that we ain't resting on. Y'all do good.